Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Anima Season Defense matches. This week's video is a bit later than usual. As I mentioned in the offense matches, I was out of town for a week and wasn't able to get these done ahead of time. I also wasn't able to get the defense matches from last week recorded, so there will be a gap between the videos of this week and the next one. I didn't make any major updates to the defense this week. There were a couple of minor adjustments to Rajat and Dorothea. Rajat got a few merges thanks to her rerun banner that ended a little bit ago, and I also ended up giving her Mirror Impact instead of Fury. The extra stats she got from the merges and Dragon Flowers means that I think she's still consistent with Windsweep without the extra speed, and the impact makes it a lot harder to tank her with a mage. Dorothea got Aerobatics, which lets her run Guidance and Seal, and gives the whole team a bit more mobility to work with. Overall, the defense held up really well again this week. We did see a couple of clean losses through the week, but for the most part we still ended up with a solid wall of successes. The losses are a bit unfortunate to see, but I don't think it's enough to be too worried just yet. And we'll see what we get in the coming weeks. Let's get to the first match. It's been a while since I actually had a loss at the start of the week, and this one stung a bit to see in my replays. They did have just about everything that could go right for them on this, with a lane 6 Catapult to snipe our hindrance and an unsniped bolt tower in lane 4. And on top of that, they had a maxed out Linja and a not maxed out Linja, backed up by a Duopeony and a Harmonic Sita. There are a lot of extra actions available to this team. Harmonic Sita can actually dance the Duopeony, and Duopeony has 2 dances to give out to her allies, while both of the Linjas, as usual, can dance themselves. And then, of course, the Sita has also got a Gale Force for another extra action on top of all of that. Altogether, this team, assuming they can pick off the Duo's hindrance, probably doesn't really have any problems handling anything they run into. It's a lot of firepower and, well, they can sweep maps pretty easily. They do end up actually wasting their Bolt Tower turn. I think just because they ended up getting one of their Linjas panicked here. And they wait one more turn before they get things started. Once they're ready, they can push Sita and Linja forward. And Linja gets things started by attacking Eliwood. And while she doesn't actually finish him off here, the defense debuff onto Edelgard is very important, since that's what lets Sita finish her off. This was really unfortunate to see, because it was a close miss, and outside of her bonus week, this wouldn't work at all. But it does here, and that lets Sita move forward and take down Felix, now that he's not guarded by Edelgard. And from there, the Linjas can start sweeping the rest of the map. Saris doesn't have much of a chance against a Naga-boosted Lyn, and the other Lyn can finally finish Eliwood off. While the extra actions let this Lyn take down Rajat. While Sita goes in and takes down Dorothea. And she can use Gale Force to get herself away from Mirabilis. Well, could have, if they'd planned it out a bit. But Mirabilis can't actually finish her off here and goes for Peony instead. And, well, it's very easy for them to pick up the pots and clean up the match after that. It is nice to get to bounce back from a failure like that with a successful defense. And they brought along a maxed out Brave Edelgard as their headliner for the team. She's fallen off quite a bit since her release, but I think she's actually still really strong as a tanky, bulky frontliner. The Max Dodosaur is also very cool. I'm still hoping to get the last couple of merches for mine at some point, and they've also got a plus 10 Naga to boost their team. Furon's always a good support to have too. Isolation is just very, very helpful, and even with Duo Hilda now providing an alternative to her, the weapon-based isolation is probably still the most consistent thing we have for Astra seasons. They end up moving in right away, and I think tried to bait Felix out with Edelgard here. But, well, it's not quite according to plan, since Eliwood just rallies forward, gets danced, and takes down Raken. The rest of the team can't actually catch up here, but they don't actually end up doing much for their following turn and just let Edelgard continue to sit in the front line. It still doesn't really go very well for them, since Edelgard does have a problem dealing with Eliwood. And even though she does survive him pretty well, and defuses his Gale Force, she takes a solid chunk of damage from it, and it's enough for a shot to finish her off. And once Edelgard's been moved out of the way, Felix can jump forward and snipe Fiora. And from there, that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was fun to see, just for a bit of a throwback unit with this plus 10 Tiki. Lightning Breath, Aether, Steady Breath, Quick Riposte is a pretty classic combo from a couple of years ago now, when it was one of the best ways to create an Omni-Tank on a dragon. I don't think it's aged as well as it could have, and Tiki is actually one of those units that I hope gets a Resplendent and possibly a Re-Refine at some point. She could really use it. And they've rounded out their team pretty well with a Bonus Week Dimitri, a Bonus Week Freya, and a Brave Micaiah, whose Refine I am not looking forward to. Felix does not have a good time with her. They ended up stepping a little too far forward here. They might have gotten baited by the turn 1 threat range display. And, well, Eliwood gets to rally forward, pick up Ashura, and Felix can jump over and snipe Raken. Even when she's not solo, Freya's actually very fast, and gets enough damage reduction from her weapon to survive her shot here. They do end up keeping on fighting here, and Dimitri can take Eliwood down without any real problems. And Freya can move in and take out Rajat. I think these might have just been some revenge knockouts though, since they send Tiki into Saros here. And that's not really a fight that Tiki's going to have much luck with. And after that combat, that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was fun to see. It's a bit of a Tellius themed team, with a maxed out Naesala headlining the squad. I like Naesala a lot, actually, and his new pirate alt is really cool. They backed him up with a Brave Micaiah and a Winter Altina, along with a bonus week normal Altina, and round out the team with Raken and Naga. I think this is probably able to handle a lot of things. The Gale Force Naesala is really good at hitting and running in the right situations, while Altina and Micaiah can really take things apart when you pick off a key target with Naesala and Micaiah and let Altina clean things up afterwards. I think they ended up trying to bait Edelgard here, which doesn't end as well as they might have liked, since, well, Eliwood rallies forward, gets danced, and finds a much easier target in Micaiah. And as usual, Felix does not have any problems taking down an Altina.
You've shown no weakness, but the gifts.
We end up getting a third knockout here too, when Rajat gets to jump over and snipe Raken. And losing half their team like that is enough for them to just surrender the match and move on. This match was another interesting one to see. They've got a Gustav acting as a bodyguard for their ranged units, including a Linja and a legendary pilot, both of whom are really good at acting as snipers before hitting and running, or just picking off key targets before planting in place. Fury's also a great way to help slow down an enemy team by disarming dancers and rally traps, and all the stuff that usually catches people off guard. It's an interesting team. I do think this actually does pretty well, since if you can pick off the enemy ranged units with Blinn and Byleth, Gustav can do a pretty good job of surviving whatever's left. They take a few turns to set up here, and actually end up missing their bolt tower window. I think they might have expected Lynn to be able to take Felix out, or just been hoping to use the bolt trap to help soften up the team. But they end up having to take a different approach. While Lynn can't actually handle Felix at all, Byleth can. He doesn't have too many problems taking Felix down, since he can double pretty easily, and, well, the pre-charged special does a lot too. And once they've done that, they flip him out of the way and move Gustav forward to screen their team. They might have underestimated Rajat, though, who can just move in and use her effective damage to one-shot Raken, and then get danced, and finish off Lynn as well thanks to the splash damage from her weapon. Unfortunately, from here we can't actually pick anything else up, mostly just because Mirabilis is isolated. Gustav isn't able to actually counterattack here, but he can still survive Eliwood and Saros. And Edelgard can't actually move in to clean things up, but losing those two is still enough for them to surrender. This was another fun match to see. They brought along a maxed out Brave Ike as one of their carries for the team. He's fallen off a lot lately, but I do think that he's still extremely solid in the right situations. He might actually be better off with a Farsafe bodyguard to let him focus on dealing with melee instead of trying to tank everything, but I think he can still do pretty well. Maxed out Brunnya is also really fun to see, and they're backing Brunnya specifically up with this Corrin as a support. Ike's Infantry Pulse also gives Brunnya a way to get a much faster noontime on her first counterattack, which can really help her survive the most threatening enemy on a team before she tanks her way through the rest of it. I think they might have gotten baited by the turn 1 threat range here, since I don't think they actually wanted to start the match here. As is, though. Hollywood gets rallied and danced forward, which gives him a very easy knockout on Corrin. Actually, Corrin almost survived that fight, but not quite. And even if he had, Hollywood's Gale Force means he would have gotten something done anyway. As is, Hollywood gets to take Altina out of the picture as well. Before Felix jumps in and attacks Brunnya. He can't take Brunnya down thanks to the null follow-up, but Brunnya also doesn't get a chance to heal since Felix has a guard effect. Rajat gets danced down and doesn't finish Ike off, but Ike can't actually finish her off either. Even though he has null C and quick riposte, the impact actually shuts down the second hit. They decide to keep going here. Reagan doesn't have any problems finishing Hollywood off. And they can have Ike move in and take down Rajat as well. They might not have picked the right target there though, since without his special charged, he can't actually take Ceres out. And then they just back Brunnya up and hope for the best with Ike. But with Sarah still alive, she can just move in and take Plumeria out. And then Edelgard can jump forward and actually finish off Ike. We don't get in range to attack anything else here, but losing 4 of their team is enough to surrender and move on. This was a fun one to see. A lot like some of the other matches this week, they got lucky with their Catapult placement and got to pick off our duo's hindrance at the start of the match, which I think is why they ended up using this team to try and clear it. Winter Altina and duo Micaiah are a really excellent pair of units when you get to use their duo skills, since the extra true damage and free defense debuff means that Altina can carve her way through just about any opponent thanks to the double hits. And when duo Peony can support her with an extra 6 attack from across the map, it's not hard for her to knock out an entire team on her own. They take a few turns setting up here. They wanted to pick up the Aether pots, or one of them at least, before they started this fight, since I think they expected Altina to be able to actually clear our entire team in one round. A couple of smites lets them test that trap with Reagan, and then pull Altina back and have her Kanto out of the way. Once they have that pot secured, that's enough for them to prep all of their duo skills and move Altina forward to take out Edelgard at the start of the fight. Unfortunately for Altina, Felix is less than impressed by her. And as usual, he doesn't have too many problems carving right through her. Even with the extra true damage, it's just not enough to punch through his bulk, especially with a triangle disadvantage. The dance and rally afterwards lets him jump forward and take out Micaiah, and then Hollywood gets danced for another knockout on Altina. The other Altina. Which also gives them a very easy Gale Force. And a nice knockout on their Peony. and losing 4 of their team is enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was another fun one to see. They brought along a maxed out Fallen Edelgard as their headliner. She's really impressive, and I'll get my last merge eventually. The Far Save and Heavy Blade combo is interesting. I think she might be better off with a less greedy special and a different seal. Although they probably replaced Heavy Blade with Steady Breath after they got it. Pairing her up with Layla is also a really good idea, since Layla can safely attack into an enemy team and usually pick off a key target or two before letting Edelgard intercept anything that's left. Sniping Ardira's Hindrance here also enables their Peony to let them accomplish even more hit-and-run shenanigans. They spent a few turns just moving to position. They did see that Felix is not protecting Eliwood, which is a little unfortunate, but it means that Layla can move in and pick him off, and then the second dance from Peony lets them retreat out of range and let Edelgard handle everything else. They may have underestimated Rajat a bit, though. Wind Sweep means that Edelgard never gets a chance to counterattack, and even if she was using something like Mystic Boost, Fatal Smoke means that she doesn't get to heal either. And while each individual hit from Rajat doesn't really do much to Edelgard, it adds up a lot over time, especially with her post-combat damage, and the Glimmer is enough to finish Edelgard off. And losing her is enough for them to surrender the match. This was a neat match to see. It's pretty rare to see a full sweep of the offense team on a defense. Usually people either win the match or surrender before that. And they brought along quite a few solid units to work with on this team. Fallen Edelgard, as always, is a bit of a menace if you can use her right and avoid the things that can actually threaten her. And backing her up with a Deus Sigurd and a Guinevere is a great way to help reposition units or pick off any mages that might actually be able to punch through Edelgard. They don't actually get to snipe our Hindrance here, once, although they do get an unsniped Bolt Tower to work with. Lane 5 is actually a pretty rare spot for it to be, so it's an interesting structure layout. They get going pretty quickly here and dance Fallen Edelgard in to attack into our Edelgard a couple of times, and the bonfire's enough for her to finish Edelgard off. That's all they can do though on this turn, and they might have just expected Edelgard to waltz her way through our team afterwards. Rajat has other ideas though, and one attack is enough for her to shut down Edelgard's counterattacks and healing, and the dance gets a solid chunk of damage into Edelgard. After those two attacks, Ceres is able to finish Edelgard off.
My path ends here.
Which lets the team start moving past her towards the enemy team. Felix gets to jump forward and, well, normal Altina has even less of a chance against him than Winter Altina does.
Here, take this. No, but how?
They decide to keep fighting this out and send Reagan in to attack Felix. Unfortunately, the Bolt Tower ended up missing Felix here, and without that extra damage, Reagan really can't put much of a dent in Felix, since the guard effect shuts down her ability to recharge her special. They end up pulling back after those attacks, but it's not far enough. Eliwood gets a pretty easy knockout on Secret, which also gives him a Gale Force. It lets him move over and take down Guinevere as well.
Dear brother.
Felix, meanwhile, can step over and
Do I look merry?
take Reagan out after her attempts to do the same to him, and then he gets danced and can close out the match with Plumeria.
I knew it.
This match was the second clean loss of the week. It's always a bit unfortunate to see those, but it is fun to get to see some rarer units sometimes, especially this Deke. I don't think I've really seen him outside of his bonus week, so it was really neat to actually see him turn up in a replay. And they're backing him up with a Henriette for some Farsafe, which lets him focus in on his melee capability, the way his basic hit lets him do, and a duo Hilda. They take a few turns working their way through this and getting into position. Breaking the panic manner is actually pretty important for them, and so is testing this bolt trap. And once they've done that, they just need to rearrange their team and make sure they approach this correctly. Hilda manages to move in and actually take Felix out on her own, which was really impressive and has me thinking of ways to help boost his res a bit more. And once they've done that, they can pull Hilda to safety thanks to Reagan and Deke, and then move Henriette in to cover their team with Farsafe. Unfortunately, Ceres is the one who actually ends up getting danced forward to attack Deke, since they're not threatening anybody for Eliwood to rally until it's too late. Well, Deke can handle her pretty well. The rest of the team can't catch up, so from there it's pretty easy for them to just pull back again and wait things out. Eliwood's rally actually backfires really hard here, and ends up wasting a move and an action. And while Rajat does actually end up surviving Henriette, thanks to the impact, there's nobody else who can follow through on this. So she doesn't really get to accomplish much. At this point, it's pretty easy for them to start picking the team apart. Ashura can finish Rajat off. And Deke can step forward and take Eliwood down.
In a rush to die?
They do a bit of clever baiting here, using Henriette to cover everybody, and make sure that Mirabilis should be the only one who ends up surviving this turn.
This wasn't cheap.
Getting the Luna on the first hit means that Deke can take down Edelgard without any problems. And Henriette doesn't have any problems shrugging Dorothy off either.
Don't want to lose control.
At this point, the game is mostly just about making sure they pick up at least one of the Aether pots before they close the match out. And once they have that, they take down Mirabilis and close things out.
In a rush to die?
This match was an interesting way to close out the week. It is nice to finish on a successful defense, at least. And seeing a duo Leaf on an offense team isn't something that's particularly common. I think he works pretty well with this. He actually does a very good job of pushing Altina into vantage range, and his raw damage output doesn't really change from defense to offense. Which means that he can pick off a key target that Altina might not be able to handle pretty easily, while also enabling her vantage, and then she can pull him to safety. I'm not really sure how Flame works into this. She can help Altina get into vantage range safely, I guess, as Leaf can't find a target to attack first. They end up testing this heavy trap and having Reagan Kento back, but I think they end up realizing that Reagan didn't make it out of the threat range and surrender the match immediately. Overall, it was another pretty successful week of defenses for the team. The clean losses were a bit unfortunate to see, and that second one has me thinking about ways to boost Felix's bulk a bit more. But I'm still happy with how well the team's doing. We might end up making some updates after Choose Your Legends, though. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get, and I'm planning to make a first impressions video to break down my initial thoughts on the new Brave units. I do have a Discord link in the description if you'd like to hang out to chat, and there's also a Patreon page if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.